The bar was alive with soft jazz music, the dim golden lights casting a warm glow over the polished wooden counters. Ethan sat at the far end, his fingers lazily tracing the rim of his glass. He wasn't looking for anything special tonight, until she walked in. Sophie. She was breathtaking. Her black satin dress clung to her body in all the right ways, her wavy brown hair cascading down her bare shoulders. She walked with confidence, her deep blue eyes scanning the room until they landed on him. For a moment time stood still. Ethan felt a pull, an invisible force drawing him toward her. Their eyes locked and a slow, knowing smile curled on her lips. She didn't break eye contact as she approached the bar, sliding onto the seat next to him. "You look like you're waiting for someone," Ethan murmured, his voice smooth and deep. Sophie smirked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe I was waiting for you." A charged silence settled between them, the air thick with anticipation. Ethan leaned in slightly, their faces inches apart. He could smell her perfume, sweet, intoxicating. "Is that so?" he whispered, his fingers grazing her hand lightly, testing the waters. Sophie didn't move away. Instead, she intertwined her fingers with his, her touch deliberate, slow. "You tell me." Ethan's pulse quickened. He reached out, brushing his knuckles against her cheek, feeling the warmth of her skin. Sophie closed her eyes for a moment, leaning into his touch. The tension was unbearable. He didn't hesitate. Ethan cupped her face gently, tilting it slightly before capturing her lips in a slow, passionate kiss. Sophie responded instantly, her fingers gripping his collar as she pulled him closer. The kiss deepened, their breaths mingling, their bodies pressing together as heat surged between them. Her hands slid up his chest, exploring, memorizing. Ethan groaned softly against her lips, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her flesh against him. Every touch, every movement spoke volumes, desire, longing, something unspoken yet undeniable. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads rested against each other, breathing heavily. Sophie's lips were swollen, her eyes filled with something dangerously addictive. "That was..." Ethan began, his voice husky. "Just the beginning," Sophie finished, her fingers trailing down his arm. And neither of them planned to stop. Ethan's heart pounded as Sophie's fingers lingered on his arm, her touch sending shivers down his spine. The world around them faded. There was only her, only this intoxicating moment. "I don't usually do this," she whispered, her lips inches from his. "Neither do I," Ethan admitted, his fingers tracing slow circles on her lower back. But none of it mattered. The way her body fit against his, the way her breath hitched when he touched her, it felt inevitable. Sophie tugged at his collar, pulling him in for another deep kiss. This time, it was more urgent, more desperate. Ethan's hands roamed down her sides, feeling every curve, every soft dip of her body. Their kisses grew hungrier, breaths mingling, lost in the heat of the moment. "Come with me," she murmured, her voice a seductive whisper against his lips. Ethan didn't hesitate. He took her hand, intertwining their fingers, as they slipped through the crowded bar and out into the cool night air. The city lights flickered around them, but neither of them paid attention. Their world was narrowed down to each other. As soon as they reached Sophie's apartment, she turned, pressing Ethan against the door. Her fingers traced his jaw before pulling him into another kiss, slow, teasing. Ethan groaned against her lips, his hands gripping her waist, pulling her closer. She giggled softly, her lips brushing against his ear. "You taste like whiskey." "And you taste like trouble," he smirked, pressing soft kisses along her jawline, down to her neck. Sophie tilted her head back, letting out a breathless sigh, as his lips explored her skin. The door swung open, and they stumbled inside, lost in the storm of their desire. Ethan's hands roamed over her back as Sophie guided him toward the couch. She pushed him down gently, straddling his lap, her fingers running through his hair. Their lips met again, soft at first, then deeper, more urgent. Ethan's hands traveled up her thighs, sending waves of heat through her body. Sophie shivered under his touch, her fingers slipping beneath his shirt, feeling the warmth of his skin. "Tell me this isn't just for tonight," she murmured, her eyes searching his. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't think I could ever let you go." And in that moment, neither of them wanted to stop. Sophie traced lazy circles on Ethan's chest, her head resting against his shoulder. The dim glow of the city lights filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows around the room. Neither of them spoke for a while, simply enjoying the warmth of each other's presence. Ethan brushed his fingers through her silky hair, inhaling the sweet scent of her perfume. "I could stay like this forever," he murmured. Sophie smiled against his skin, her lips brushing lightly over his collarbone. "Forever is a long time," she teased, tilting her head up to meet his gaze. Ethan cupped her face, his thumb tracing along her jawline. "Then how about we start with tomorrow?" For a moment, something flickered in Sophie's eyes, hesitation, maybe even fear. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a soft, longing look. She leaned in, capturing his lips in a slow, lingering kiss. Ethan pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, letting the heat between them rise again. Her fingers slid into his hair, tugging him gently, making his pulse race. Their breaths mingled, their bodies pressed together, lost in the electricity of the moment. Sophie pulled away just enough to whisper against his lips, "You make it too easy to forget everything else." Ethan studied her, sensing something beneath her words. "Is that a bad thing?" She hesitated, her fingers tracing small patterns on his arm. "No," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It just scares me." Ethan tilted her chin up, forcing her to look into his eyes. "I don't want to be just another memory for you, Sophie." She swallowed hard, her expression unreadable. Then instead of answering, she kissed him again, slow, deep, as if trying to tell him something words couldn't. Ethan felt it. The fear, the longing, the unspoken emotions wrapped between every touch, every kiss. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't ready to let her go. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't ready to leave either. Ethan tightened his arms around Sophie, feeling the warmth of her body against his. The way she fit perfectly in his embrace made him wonder. Was this what love felt like? Was this the moment he had been waiting for his entire life? Sophie sighed against his chest, her fingers lazily tracing patterns over his skin. But something about the way she held him felt different, as if she was trying to memorize every touch, every moment, as if she was afraid it would slip away. Ethan lifted her chin gently, making her meet his gaze. "Talk to me," he murmured. Sophie hesitated. For the first time, she looked vulnerable, her confidence replaced by something fragile. "Ethan, She stopped, biting her lip. He cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheek. "You can tell me anything." She took a shaky breath, her eyes searching his for reassurance. "I wasn't supposed to meet you," she admitted. "I wasn't supposed to feel this way." Ethan frowned, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Sophie pulled away slightly, sitting up. She wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to shield herself from something. "I had plans that didn't involve falling for someone." Ethan sat up too, his heart pounding. "Falling?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded slowly, her eyes shining with emotion. "I tried to fight it, but you made it impossible." Ethan reached for her, his fingers brushing her arm. "Then don't fight it, Sophie. Stay." Her breath hitched, and for a second he thought she would say yes. But then, a tear slipped down her cheek. "I wish it were that simple," she whispered. Ethan's grip tightened. "Whatever it is, we can figure it out. Just don't walk away." Sophie leaned in, pressing her lips to his in a slow, heart-wrenching kiss. It wasn't full of passion like before. It was desperate, aching, filled with unsaid words. Ethan kissed her back, pouring every emotion into it, silently begging her to stay. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I don't want to leave, Ethan," she whispered. "But I don't know if I have a choice." Ethan's heart clenched. He wasn't just falling for her. He was already in love. And he wasn't going to let her go without a fight. Ethan stared into Sophie's eyes, his heart pounding. He could feel her slipping away. But he wasn't ready to lose her. "Sophie," he whispered, cupping her face. "Tell me what's wrong. Let me help you." She closed her eyes, as if gathering the strength to speak. When she finally did, her voice trembled. "I'm leaving, Ethan. I was never meant to stay." His grip tightened. "Leaving? Where? Why?" She swallowed hard, her fingers clutching the sheets beneath her. "I'm moving to another country. A new job, a new life. Everything was planned before I met you. Ethan felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath him. So that's it? He asked, his voice laced with pain. You were going to leave without telling me? Tears welled in Sophie's eyes. I didn't want to hurt you. But then I fell for you, and now I don't know what to do. Ethan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Then stay, he pleaded. Stay with me, Sophie. We can figure this out. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. It's not that simple, Ethan. My whole life is waiting for me there. His chest ached. And what about us? She let out a choked sob. I love you, she admitted, her voice breaking. But love isn't always enough. Ethan felt his heart shatter. He had never expected to hear those words, so beautiful, yet so painful. Then let me come with you, he whispered. Sophie's eyes widened. You'd do that? I'd do anything for you. She shook her head again, though her fingers clung to his, as if she never wanted to let go. You have your own life here, Ethan. I can't ask you to leave it all behind. Silence filled the room. The weight of reality pressed between them. Finally, Sophie took a deep breath and leaned in, kissing him softly, one last time. Ethan kissed her back, pouring everything into it, as if trying to freeze the moment forever. When she pulled away, she whispered, I'll never forget you. And then just like that, she was gone. Ethan sat there, staring at the empty space beside him. His heart ached, but deep inside, he knew one thing. This wasn't the end. Because some love stories never truly end. They just wait for the right time to begin again.